All right, we are now live. Hey, I'm here with Dan Cook, a really cool guy I've been talking to for a little bit, working on a Savage Worlds podcast. And there we go. Now I'm up. I had it locked on you, Dan. But yeah, before we get started, because we're in Savage It episode 2, do you want to talk about your project coming up? I think this will air after it started, if I'm not wrong.
Okay, yeah. So I have a new podcast coming up. It's going to be the Many Savage Worlds podcast and some live YouTube videos as well. We're going to be talking about setting up Savage Worlds settings from the ground up for GMs, sort of a guide and toolkit, just showing people how easy it can be. Instead of going out, buying all the setting books, searching through archives of people's fan-released, just go out there, make it yourself.
Yeah, basically a lot like a much more formal and probably more professional version of Savage It, only less specific pop culture. When I heard about that project, I was super interested. Now, you said you saw our first episode, so you get the gist of what we're doing here. Yeah, and we try to hold to the rule of only one book other than core. Similar to that, not sifting through a bunch of stuff, not feeling the need to have 50 books to get something done. All right, I got my big old bucket. We actually, after our last episode, our numbers about doubled in here. So we had so many great suggestions. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with this one because I haven't gotten to talk to you. Did you ever watch Jackie Chan Adventures, the cartoon?
I've seen a few, but no, not very.
Seen a few? You got the gist.
All right.
Like, it does get convoluted, but Jackie Chan Adventures, in my mind, is almost the perfect Savage Worlds like setting for people who want to do pulp. Because, I mean, again, if you've seen it, it's Jackie Chan in like Indiana Jones pulpy stuff, only, hey, he has talismans, and each talisman has exactly one power tied to it. Huh. That sounds a lot like stuff in the Savage Worlds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, first, what we tend to do is we go through the setting rules, just the suggested ones. We kind of figure what goes. I'm kind of getting this feel, since it is specifically a Saturday morning cartoon, we kind of want that Saturday morning feel on top of pulp, which is an interesting mix. And we know there'll be magic talismans. I think as long as you have all of those and like martial arts, you basically have the show. You have what the essence would be.
Yeah, it's all
done. Oh, one second.
No problem.
I'll mute this for a second. All right. But yeah, so I'm going to assume blood and guts is all. I mean, you could run a Saturday morning cartoon with blood and guts, but...
yeah, not usually the first choice.
Yeah. Born a Hero sounds perfect. Again, this I think is a really underrated setting rule.
Yeah, I think Born a Hero pretty much sums up pulp as well as any other rule can.
Totally. I kind of love it. Got a lot of attention when Savage Rifts came out because it's great for supers. It's great for all this where you go, hey, yeah, there's one rule in here that fixes, like, a lot of people are like, I can't do this at character creation. Critical failures, I'm almost always down for. I don't know your opinion on those.
I'm kind of 50-50. I don't use it a lot, personally. But then again, I find a lot of my players really enjoy failing. So,
yeah,
sort of like officially there anyways, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, if they like failing, it's kind of always there. I mean, you got a few rules that do it no matter what when you look at like Berserk and Friendly Fire.
Yeah.
It's kicked up a notch. Fanatics is one of the... I don't think I've ever officially made Fanatics a rule. I almost feel like it should be an edge for villains, because like when it's fitting, it's great, but for like every villain, it feels old.
You know, I think that's a really, really astute point. That makes a really great, like, supervillain edge, like you stated.
Yeah, yeah, like a villainous wildcard edge.
Yeah, exactly.
Gritty damage, I'd say no in a Saturday morning's kid cartoon. However, again, worth bringing up for the sake of all this, especially since we're only for my show, we're 2 in. This is you and I's first talk. Like Gritty Damage, everyone who's like, Savage Worlds isn't hard, like it's not deadly. Here.
Yep.
Right here.
Oh, yeah.
This is what you do. Even without Gritty Damage, one of the ones I love to talk about is in an ETU game I ran forever ago. He got it because he technically reached incapacitated. But at the end of an adventure, after all the fighting, someone slipped and fell in an open grave, and it dealt his final wound. Now it was you get the wound off once you heal all your wounds, and he got a broken arm. It took him like 6 months in game to heal that because he had to heal 3 wounds off. And it's like, oh, this game's only pulpy. It's only high action. Nah, have a character with 1 arm for half a year.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Heroes Never Die, I think kind of definitely goes with your Saturday morning feel. I'm always so torn on this rule.
Yeah, no, for like high action, I think it's fitting. Yeah. I think the way they word it kind of makes it sound more like it only applies to supers. But I think it works great for the super actiony Chan adventures.
Yeah, and anything serialized, it works well for. I do appreciate that they specifically go, yeah, you pick this, it's also the villains. Like, just nobody dies. You don't get to die, they don't get to die. Oh, yeah. I think another criminally underrated setting rule that doesn't get used enough. High adventure. I'd love to hear how you feel about high adventure.
I got to be honest, I have never ran it. I've read it, and that's about as far as I've ever gone. I do think it's a great setting rule, and I'm going to have to use it soon because it has such great potential.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword. I will say, as someone who's ran it, it doesn't work for new players because it's sticker shock. You have so many options for a Benny use at that point. But when you have a group of people who know the game inside and out, all of a sudden this becomes a very, very cool rule. Because then it's like, I have this weird... It basically is a mechanical answer to, I have this weird idea, and my character, like, the numbers really don't say it's possible. Spend a Benny, and it's going to give you some advantage to do it. That's basically, like, spend a Benny, now you got the combat edge, that'll let you try.
Right. I run a lot of teaching games, and my home group we're still all fairly new, so I don't get a chance to run with a lot of really experienced players. Or I run online and I'll have a few really good players and a few people still learning the ropes.
I ran teaching games when I first fell in love with Savage Worlds. I ran teaching games for like a year straight. Like even my regular players are like, just run a campaign. I'm like, no, I need to get people to try this game. This game's awesome.
Yeah, it really is.
I get it. Here is one I always use. I actually modify it. I know you said you'd seen some of my videos. I don't know if you've seen my homebrew or house rules video yet, but Joker's Wild, I actually modify.
I heard you mention it in the first episode of Savage It, but I have not seen you describe it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I do have a house rules video that like literally goes to a PDF and all, but I have a rule called Joker's Wilder, and it's real simple, but it does kick it up a notch. Anyone drawing a Joker, including villains, causes the bennies, but the GM gets bennies.
Okay.
So the GM gets one, and some people don't like this because they're like, the GM shouldn't get any bennies, but if say you even have only 3 people at the table, a Joker comes up, the players combined get 3. The GM gets 1. Because I don't give it to every like wild card I have, just the GM pool. Or else it would get crazy. But yeah, I do it that way, so whenever a Joker comes, they feel like, oh yeah, everything's awesome. But the tension and the actual danger ratchets up a little bit.
Sure. No, I like that. That's actually it's a really interesting way to play it off.
I actually, the funny thing, I ended up doing it by like the 3rd time I ended up getting a Joker, and the players were like, one player wasn't fully paying attention, would see the Joker and like, oh my god, a Joker's out, we all get bennies. I'm like, I'm sorry. No. And I hate doing that when it's something like a Joker. So this way, if we just make it blanket, whenever you see a Joker, everybody gets to be excited. You don't have to worry about whose it is. It's still an exciting thing. And if bad guys are getting +2 to everything they do to you, you might as well be excited about something.
Yeah, that's actually, I think my players would really enjoy that because actually, I think it was just our last session. Everybody was like really drained on bennies, and it wasn't a super hard fight, but it really wasn't going in their favor. And I drew the ace, I mean the joker rather, and they were, distraught over.
That was my final straw on the third one because it was a boss fight when it happened. When I finally went, I'm making a different rule. I'm tweaking this. That way, everybody just like the energy stays up and everybody stays happy.
Yeah.
Multiple languages. I think, like, if you looked by the book of a game like Jackie Chan Adventures, you go, "Oh, they're globe trotting and all that." I would kind of love, especially if you're doing like something campy. I think this could work if you want it realistic. I'd love to see some kind of like subtitles, campy kind of setting rule where everyone has different languages, but like you can drop a Benny or something to read the subtitles.
Okay.
I would really love something like that. But yeah, that's one I could take or leave because again, we're in Saturday morning cartoons. I think languages are a big thing for globetrotting, but it clashes with everyone seems to conveniently know everything and understand everybody anyways.
Sure.
And then no PowerPoints. This is again a personal thing. I actually prefer the no PowerPoints rule whenever possible. You said you do too?
Yes. Yep.
Nice. All right. Yeah, we're gonna get along great. It's funny because it removes bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised the bookkeeping answer is the standard. I do get it keeping things in check, but it removes bookkeeping and it really screws if you do like their version of supers in the core book. Where it's like supers don't work. With no PowerPoints, they kind of do. I've run X-Men with their book. That's a totally separate one. I did it. I did their version of supers where everybody got to pick one power. And then I used the academic rules from ETU and went Xavier Institute. Go.
Very cool.
It worked. It actually worked really well.
I ran no PowerPoints, and it's funny because, I think a lot of people feel like it's more overpowered as well. That like, oh, without PowerPoints, you can just cast spells nonstop, and but they miss so much.
They miss so much, and the backlashes are worse. I think that's one a lot of people forget. In the core, you get a backlash if you roll double ones. No PowerPoints, you get a backlash if you roll a 1 on your skill die.
Right.
It's so much easier to backlash, and they're harsher.
Yeah.
Like I do think a lot of people overlook that because I've had, in fact, in the last episode when we were talking about backlash and stuff for the Rick and Morty conversion, Mike was bringing up stuff and I actually forgot that I was like, that's not in my copy. Do I have an old copy? He's talking about the PowerPoint backlash rules because they're totally different. And then finally, skill specialization. I'd say in a pulp game, you don't need it. If you're doing Saturday morning, you don't need it.
I don't prefer it, and I know why it's there because some people really are bookkeepers, and but I think it sort of just goes right against the grain of Savage Worlds.
Woolcock, Richard Woolcock, Zadamar, he actually came up with a skill specialization system I absolutely love because it actually fixes another thing that I've seen confuse a lot of players. So basically what it is you can take a skill up to your attribute die. Normal. Nothing different. If you want to go beyond your attribute die, you pick one specialization for it, and that specialization goes beyond. But it doesn't cost 2 skill points. The cost never changes.
Interesting.
And the thing I love about that is because the cost never changes, if, say, you had a D6 agility and you took your fighting up to a D8. Fine. D8, say it's swords. When you raise your agility up to a D8, you then end up with D8 everything. Because it's equal to your attribute again.
Right.
It counterbalances itself, and there's no tax for jumping the gun ahead of attributes. Because I get why they want attributes to be more expensive beyond or skills to be more expensive beyond their attribute.
Sure.
I get the reasoning for that, but it creates issues when the attributes catch up later.
Very true, yeah.
And that, it just fixes it. There's also no more is it 1 point or 2 points? Which when I was doing a lot of teaching, a lot of players, for it being something so simple, constantly were like, "Oh my god, that's where they got confused."
I got really lucky. I came from Shadowrun back when 5th edition, but their PowerPoint build or their purchase points, I think they call it, is the exact same almost.
It is. I've run some of that.
When I found Savage Worlds, it was like second nature to me at that point, and a few of my players have come with me since all the way back then. And but yeah, I can see where jumping from, is it 1, is it 2, how much do things cost, and where are the limits? And I have a few people that came from D20, and they struggle a little bit more.
The funny thing, my main one is I didn't have issues with my first group and kind of my core group, because again, we would run Savage Worlds, we've run GURPS, we've run all that. Your experienced players don't seem to do it. I've actually used Savage Worlds to get people who've never played games ever. Those are the ones that tend to get confused, because when you just start hitting that real game mechanics and that, like, you're feeling the crunch for the first time and you lock up a little bit. Because that's my thing. The reason I've run ETU so much is I actually found it was a setting I can get people who weren't interested in D&D, weren't interested in cyberpunk or sci-fi into. Because I was like, well, it's like Supernatural, it's like Buffy, it's very relatable but different. And I think I've converted like 8 or 9 people who never touched a tabletop game into it because of it. But those are the people that tend to have that confusion for the most part for me. Okay, so from that, this one's actually a little tricky. Funny thing is, again, the seg's actually really easy because it's almost built for the core. But it's like, if we were to add one book, what would we add? From Pinnacle, I'm torn, but if you had third party, I'd probably say Thrilling Tales. But I love Thrilling Tales.
So I've heard of it. I've heard a lot of the content of it from listening and seeing different things, but I haven't read it. I haven't been exposed to a lot of the setting books, personally. I have a couple. I have some of the companions. Yeah, and that's the other thing, too, is like they outnumber players, I think, at this point. Yeah,
I mean, for official ones, it's kind of weird. The real time to get into it was when Goon and Fear Agents was out. I don't know if you had discovered it at that point. But their Kickstarter, as a thing, anyone who backed the Kickstarter, they gave you like 5 settings for free. It was nuts because it came with like Last Parsec, Deadlands, ETU, Rippers, and I think one other. Wow. And it was like an all-star pack too.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it really was. It's one of those that was funny because, again, I'm a big ETU advocate and really pushed that one up because it was one of those, not a lot of, well, it got backed well, but after the backers, it kind of, everybody was like, what's this weird thing?
And it's funny because I hear it spoken really highly of from people who play it, and I'm sure people who have never experienced it, they can't really speak on it.
It's one of those things, again, I don't want to come off like, oh, it's ETU. It is the one setting. First of all, I think I've had the most pushback on getting people to play who'd already game. But I have never found someone who after one session wasn't hooked. Just absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Thrilling Tales is a good one. I really like it. I would love to see them do another update to it. It's pulp. It's 20s to 40s pulp.
I believe that's the one that's typically referred to as the pulp companion unofficially, that it sort of sums up everything.
It's actually written very much like the companion books as well.
Okay.
Which is helpful. But no, it actually does have villain edges. It has NPC wildcard edges. And it has edges like Deus Ex, where the GM can spend a Benny and the villain, no matter what the situation, instantly had pre-planned an escape plan based on what's currently happening. Or like by chance, like you can have him trapped in a volcano with lava behind him. You play Deus Ex and a stalactite falls and he can use that to get away.
Now, not to play the devil's advocate, but don't we just call that GM Fiat?
We do. I actually really, really like it when there's a cost, though.
Sure.
Because anytime a player goes, well, that's some bullshit, it's like, I spent a Benny, and here it is in the rules.
That's true. It does make it seem a little more fair.
It's a little more fair. And the fact that there is a cost isn't just here it is in the rules tough. It's, hey, that's what the Bennies are for in this kind of game.
Yeah, and I think it's really nice to have, although they're not going to be able to defeat the villain, I think it's nice to have a Benny drain for the GM that isn't just soaking wounds and...
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is the two main things the GM's going to do is either soak wounds, which is going to undo a player's success.
Yep.
Or reroll, and 9 times out of 10, those rerolls are for attacks, which means you're now actively trying to kill one specific player.
Right.
Now, I tend to try and spread them out, but I've definitely seen players like give me the stink eye when I'm like, look, I know he's going down in about a round. Either I soak them all or someone's getting hurt. And again, and that one of those weird things with my Joker's Wilder rule. I've actually had crazy sessions where we've had like 2 Jokers in the same round come up. I've had as many as 6 Jokers in a session happen.
Wow.
Which means, and I'm typically playing with about 5 people. That means even if I've been burning them, I gained a total of 11 bennies. That's a lot of bennies.
Yeah, it sure is.
I like having things to spend them on. Actually, next week, which this should be out, I'm going to talk about one because an adventure, completely unrelated, oddly enough, it is an ETU adventure in the Savage Tales of Horror Volume 3 called Hotel 96, which they introduce mechanics for you're like in this time loop controlled by a demon. And anytime you screw with the time loop, it creates chaos and it gives the GM a Benny. But the GM has like a list of things they can spend the Benny on. And I reconverted that into time travel rules. Because it's screwing with a time, like it's a time paradox thing. And I wrote this thing where I love that idea of just having a list. As long as it's agreed upon beforehand of, and these are the other things I can do with a Benny. Like, oh, random explosion.
Yeah, I think it's great to have other ways to incorporate, especially GM bennies. I just think there's not to say there's not enough, because it's the same things the players can do, but it just feels a little cheaper, I think, when the GM does the same things. Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's to make you feel better. The bennies are very much to make you feel even more heroic. The thing is, when the GM has it, it's either to swat you down or twist the knife. Like, those are really the only ways to use it. Okay, so next up, I guess, we talk about powers. Because we have a setting. Again, if you haven't seen most of it, they have talismans. Each talisman is one of the Chinese years.
Okay.
And each one has a power. Real simple. Things like, I think Rooster was like super speed or something like that. As we said, no PowerPoints is perfect for anything that should be able to go off whenever you need it to, but maybe be unreliable. So then the question is, like, which one do you retrap? Do you go, with it being devices, do you go the obvious and go weird science? I completely blanked on one of the core ones. Or do you just go, oh, it's magic and they're foci?
Right. It comes down to, is it weird science, which is kind of like the fallback for things that don't fit into other, which makes sense because it is sort of the abstract. But then there is always the option of doing more of a custom magic rule, like Deadlands did with the Huckster. You know, they kind of just went and just said, you know what, this is what it's going to be. Actually, I believe they had quite a few custom magic in Deadlands. I've only played it a few times, but
once you go, all their magic does have some slight tweaks to it. Like, one of the things I actually kind of love is their divine magic. When you fail, your faith die actually is reduced.
Yes, that's right.
And you can actually run out of faith and run out of being able to cast, which is super scary. Honestly, another one weird because I bring up ETU. I think ETU is going to be a big foundation for that new horror companion coming out because there's so many mechanics in it. But their talisman rules are super cool.
Okay.
The main thing is their magic system is a ritual magic system. So if you have the horror companion, it's close but slightly tweaked. I don't know if you've read through that part of the Horror Companion.
I have not, or at least not off the top of my head.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, one of the things I found I really personally like from Ritual is it lays on top of almost all other magic systems because there's no edge to buy into it. You need to be trained in ritualism, and rituals take time to do. ETU, they do them as a dramatic task, and in ETU, they specifically have to get items to perform it. So, like, you have components you have to go find, but there's no edge to do it. It's just you can try it without the skill, and the backlashes are very, very, very bad. It's almost like the Harrowed table in Deadlands. Only they last, like, I believe, a number of weeks equal to the power points of the power. So it's a really weird thing. But in that, they added talismans, which lets you do, like, a much harder ritual to make it into an item that just activates with spirit. But I believe if you fail at all, it doesn't work for 24 hours. If you roll a 1 on your skill die, you're shaken. And if you snake eyes, the talisman just destroys itself. Like, permanently gone.
Okay. Yeah, that's I haven't read that, but that's actually really it's a really nice little the complications provides a little something extra.
Yeah, I like a big table. They added some weird ones, like your gender swapped for so many weeks if you screw up a ritual. And then they, on top of it, because, Savage Worlds loves to go, oh, if you're having a bad time, we're going to push you even harder when you're down. They also have the black magic table, which if you fail, something bad happens from the failure table. But then fail or succeed, you also have something happen from the corruption table from black magic. So they're like, and you don't know if something's black magic unless you research it or try it.
Yeah, they really stick it to you on that one, huh?
They do. Untrained is gnarly too. It's a weird system I think I've ever seen for Untrained because it's not D4 -2. It's your smarts die -2, and all casting penalties are doubled.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're just like, you can try, and you can't take the skill until you've attempted a ritual on at least assisted in one, untrained. You're like, you want to get into this, it's going to go bad. But you can.
Yeah. That reminds me of, I haven't played it in Savage Worlds yet, but like the Cthulian magic, where it's just like, yeah, you can do it, but you really aren't going to like what happens after.
That's basically the level the Horror Companion is. Because all of this is like made slightly pulpier and more like Buffy compared to the Horror Companions version.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with that, we have setting rules. I don't think we really need any new setting rules. It's a pretty... You got lucky. You got a real straightforward one. You didn't get Rick and Morty. That took us forever. But we've discussed some books that would work. I do definitely suggest if you ever get a chance to get your hands on at least a PDF of Thrilling Tales, look at it. That's the other thing I forgot. Thrilling Tales is when you see people on the forums and stuff talk about different types of extras, that's from Thrilling Tales. Okay. The skilled extra and the tough extra that have like a wild die or an extra wound. That first showed up. They're the ones where they're like, oh, you can have goons, but let's have some different goons. But yeah, I think, again, pretty simple. You ended up with, I have a few gimmies in here. I have Indiana Jones in this bucket. Just to basically go, hey, we're done. Again, if you saw last episode, one of the gimmies already came up with Goonies. It's like, all right, everybody has Young, you're done. Easy enough. But yeah, I think that's great. Anything you want to plug or anything else you want to bring up and add to the discussion on this?
No, not particularly. Like I said, I'm not super familiar with the setting, so I can't really weigh in too heavily. Yeah. But, Saturday morning cartoons are some of the easiest things to do with Savage Worlds. I mean, it's, with the exception of probably Indiana Jones, you can't get any more straightforward for Savage Worlds. But I will say, as a shameless plug, keep an eye out for the Many Savage Worlds podcast. It can be found on YouTube under Many Savage Worlds, Facebook. It will be on iTunes, just a little bit of a delay getting it edited and ready to go up. And let's see, we're having a sit down with you, Bobby, of course, and a couple other hosts. Actually, what, 4 days from now, right? This weekend coming up?
Sunday.
Yeah. And then
as long as my wife's like, hey, there's something you forgot to do, I'll be there.
Perfect. And then we'll be doing our first episode 2 weeks after that. So it's kind of a delayed recording schedule every 2 weeks. But unfortunately, kids and wives and jobs and lives. But everyone keep an eye out for it, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for it. Again, I'm hoping to be able to make it with everything going on, but I'm super excited regardless. Either way, I'm going to eventually show up because it sounds like a blast. And I totally get that every 2 weeks. I mean, this Friday, I'm running my Friday night game where I'm running it only every other week. And my ETU had to get pushed to every other week because everybody ended up went, hey, I have new work schedules and we can't do this.
Yeah,
so.
I run 2 games, both on every other week, on opposite weeks. So that way I only do 1 game a week. And I'll pick up a game as a player once in a while, but only when my fiance, doesn't hide the laptop.
I have a serious problem. I got alternating every other weeks. I got Friday during the day. I got Friday night every other week. I'm an addict, and it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna sign off. So see you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks for having me.